Welcome to Moments with Marianne. I'm so delighted we're spending this time here today. We have a very inspiring show coming right up with special guest Daniel Gutierrez, and he's here today to share with us his new book, Radical Mindfulness, Profound Inner Peace in as Little as 60 Seconds. Once a high-powered executive and in-demand consultant who graced the covers of Latin Business and Color magazine, Daniel realized that there's more to success than a seven-figure income. As president of Premier, a prestigious national leadership organization, and an advisor to the Department of the White House personnel for the Obama administration, Daniel was a highly regarded and deeply revered leader. Though Daniel was listed as one of the top 100 Hispanics in America, something was missing. So let's welcome to the show, Daniel Gutierrez.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here. I've been waiting for this interview for a while.
Hey, so have I. I'm so excited to be spending this time with you. And my goodness, I love your book. Once I picked it up, it was like a whole new approach to mindfulness, and I love it.
Thank you. That was the goal. Make it simple for people to understand. I always felt bad for the person in the cubicle in Manhattan that's on the 50-something floor and doesn't really feel that meditation or mindfulness is for them because they don't seem to understand how to access that. And that's really the person I had in mind when I was writing this book was because I remember once being in Manhattan and I said, we're going to do a very short meditation, which scares them anyway. We're going to do a short meditation, so let's just get silent. And in that silence, I heard more noise. I almost panicked because it was, it was loud. and in a moment's time, I just listened to source. I downloaded the information, and this came out of my mouth next. And I said, well, don't resist what is. Don't resist the noise. It's there. We are supposed to be able to be mindful, radically mindful, in the moment, regardless of what's on the outside. So the noise is just part of the environment that you exist in, but it doesn't have to be part of you. And it was divinely channeled because I was stuck thinking, this is loud. Even I can't get quiet. But anyway, so thank you for your kind words. I wrote that. It took me 20 months to write the book. I thought it was going to take me 6. But because the first half of the book is so personal, writing about my mother's passing took a while for me to get through that chapter.
Wow. You can feel how thoughtful and heart-centered your book is, because it brings people to a place, because you're so right. How often are we in the city, or we could be anywhere where there's construction, there's loud noises, everything going on, and so people do often struggle with, well, I have to be in a Buddhist temple, or I have to be in the wilderness to get mindful. I can't do it here.
Right. And the truth is that, it's funny because the tagline on the book is how to find peace and tranquility in as little as 60 seconds. Now, I knew I was going to catch some flack for that. I knew, and part of subtitles should be somewhat controversial, and I was just trying to say to the people that I had already spoken to, just give yourself 60 seconds. Because I'm clear that if you give yourself 60 seconds, and if all you did was breathe, it will change your life and it will change the way you respond to life. And if you are a practitioner of meditation or a practitioner of yoga or a practitioner of mindfulness, it should take you less than 60 seconds. You should be able to get into a space of calmness in 5 seconds. And that is the truth about this work. There's nothing that one of the things that I didn't write about in the book that I think is important is that we're careful not to get into institutionalized spirituality. In other words, you got to do this, and this to reach some level of spirituality or some level of enlightenment, which isn't true. Institutionalized spirituality then becomes the same thing as institutionalized religion. And that's not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about here is how about we just learn to stop. A few years back, in Los Angeles, every year they have the top three things for New Year's, right? And it's always the same in every big city. It's money, relationships, and health. Those are the three things. Well, a couple years ago in Los Angeles, number two, or one of the top three, was peace and tranquility. Because people are sick and tired of being sick and tired. People are tired of waking up and wondering, is this it? And our world gets faster, and we're in more chaos. And yet, in the middle of all that, I have found that there is peace and tranquility when we choose to be the eye of the storm rather than the storm.
That's so important because, it's, just this false pretense that people put onto what mindfulness should be when it's something that it's a great tool to use in their daily life to come to center.
Yes, absolutely. And I find that life is just too chaotic otherwise. I'm a type A personality, alpha male, and I ran my life, most of my life, by fight or flight, motivated by stress and fear. And that's a tough way to live because eventually, that's a negative stimulant, by the way. There are negative stimulants for humans and there's positive stimulants. And the negative stimulants are stress, fear, doubt, disbelief, alcohol, and drugs. Those are the things that we use to stimulate ourselves thinking that it's okay. However, on the other side of the fence is love, number one. There's community, family. And typically the person that runs on the negative stimulant ends up somewhere trying to buy back their health or buy back their relationships because they failed. They may have gotten the financial piece right, but they failed at everything else. There was a recent study at Harvard about they interviewed, I think, 10 people, and with the exception of one, all of them said, I wish I had more time. I wish I had more time. And so finding that peace and tranquility, I'm not suggesting that you have to do what I did. I did what I did because it was my path and my journey so I can teach. However, taking that deep, it's so important for people just to realize that taking that deep breath is so important. And here's why. I'm not even going to tell you the company, but it's a big car company, a high luxury car company that I was working with. Not too long ago, I was doing a radical mindfulness training. And we walked outside because they wanted to show me the new $180,000 car they just took off the line. Of course, I don't even know why they showed it to me. I wasn't going to buy it, but it was nice to look at it. But as we walked outside the door of the building, is the first parking slot, there's a gentleman slunched over the steering wheel, asleep, passed out. And I said, my goodness, who's that? Oh, that's the CEO.
Uh-oh.
What kind of example are we setting? If that's your life, you have no life.
Yeah. That's just, it's interesting, just the path that different people take. But eventually, as you're saying, even when we get towards the end of our life, there are things that if we don't take time now to invest in, we're going to regret later. And in your book, Radical Mindfulness, I really feel helps people get into a space where they can discover that for themselves. And was that part of maybe some of the inspiration behind writing this book?
Well, there was a couple of things that inspired me to write this book. And one was the moment of realization I had about who and what I was, and I'll tell you that story in just a minute. And then the second one was the passing of my mother. And they're all interconnected. But if you can just imagine this, I'm going to paint a really pretty picture. So I'm in New York City. It's November, December time frame. I'm not really sure which month it was. I'm at a membership-only club, sitting in a huge leather couch or chair. I'm wearing my custom-made suit and shoes, and I'm drinking a $250 shot of cognac, and I am thinking I am it. I am so full of myself, it's not even funny. On the outside, it's snowing, and these big, billowy snowflakes. I mean, it was the sexiest thing I've ever seen in my life. It's like almost like a part of It's a Wonderful Life. I mean, just watching this whole thing going on. But, I was looking at myself in the reflection, and all of a sudden I realized that I could see like a tear coming down one of my eyes, on my cheek. And then I heard this voice that said, "Who are you? And what values did you sell to be where you're at right now?" That shocked me. Like, why in that moment, at the pinnacle of what I would call success, a little small town boy from Midlothian, Texas, sitting high up in the who's who of Manhattan, and I get this question. Now, to kind of give you some context, I need to go back to the age of 17. The age of 17, I was a licensed Baptist minister. Most people don't know that. I was a licensed Baptist minister. Yeah, believe that? I studied, I studied the Bible, Hebrew, Greek. I mean, I was in. So that's another story. You can read that in my first book. but that's, I wanted to give you that context because that voice came from what happened to Danny boy. What happened to that innocent little boy? And what values did you sell? Because the truth is that if you're in leadership, anywhere where you are in high level leadership, sometimes you have to turn your head the other way and of things that don't necessarily are part of your value system, but you do it because you want to keep your position as a leader. And to give you a little bit of idea of why this was important to me is at the time that I was sitting there, I was an advisor to the Department of White House Personnel for President Obama. I was president of one of the most prestigious national organizations for C-suite level people in New York City. I was managing it from Los Angeles, going back and forth. And I was a very high-paid speaker, doing very well. But in that moment, when I heard that voice say to me, because I knew that that my success was predicated on the amount of stress I had in my life, that the stress was motivating me. That was my stimulant. And I realized, well, that's no way to live. So at that moment, I made a decision. And I literally, when I say I walked away from it all, I walked away from it all. I no longer was engaged in the White House, phone calls about the things they needed. My tenure as president was coming to an end, and I just ended that. And I quit speaking. I quit doing keynote presentations and trainings. And I had a huge clientele list. And I spent the next 6 years traveling to the Himalayas to work with the Buddhist monks, which was an eye-opening thing, and then the Sanskrit priests high in the coffee plantations of Kathmandu, all the way back over to the maestros and the shamans of deep in the Amazon jungle, and not Amazon.com, folks. I'm not talking about Seattle. I'm talking about Amazon. I have to say that because people say, "Oh, you went to Seattle?" No. I'm talking about the mosquito-ridden jungle. And so from the jungle, I went to the Andes and worked with the Quiro and the Pacos and the shamans of that area. And one day I was, 5 years later, maybe 4 or 5 years later, I felt like Forrest Gump in the movie Forrest Gump when he's running back and forth from one side of the coast to the other, where he just stops and he just looks up and says, "Well, I think that's all I have to say about that." And I thought to myself in that moment, what have you done? You left your career, you left your leadership positions, you left your high level status, and for what? Are you out of your mind? Because at this point, I was pretty much running out of money. And I'm going, okay, that's a great motivator right there, trust me. So all of a sudden, I'm like, just going, what happened? And Marianne, I got home, and I got a call from my sister, and she says, "You need to come home." And my mother had been sick for a couple of years, and her health had taken a turn for the worse, and so I knew what that meant, and I traveled back to Dallas to be with her. When I got to the hospital, I realized that my family had been taking care of her for a long time, and since I was the one child that wasn't close, when I got there, I said, let me be with her tonight. Let me serve her. Let me give her what she needs. You guys go home and rest. Now, the question why was the question I was asking when I was in the Andes, and this is the why. All this happened And this is the motivator or the answer to your question of what motivated the book. So I'm sitting in a hospital room, and as you must know, that, I'm thinking to myself, what a horrible son you've been. You never came to see your mother enough. You should have brought your son to come see her. I mean, all this stuff was going through. Poor me. I'm losing my mom. And then, like in a moment of clarity, I remembered what the Buddhist monks had taught me. I remembered what the Sanskrit priests had taught me. I remembered what the Pacos, the shamans of the Andes and the Amazon, all at one time. Stay present, I heard. Stay present. Be with her. And I got so present that none of these egotistical thoughts and humanistic ideas and feelings and emotions were no longer taking over me. I was very present, and I was staring at my mother as she lay there in the bed. It's about 2 o'clock in the morning. And I couldn't sleep because all the little lights and things that are on her, they kept going off, and I kept thinking, oh my gosh, she's dying. And in this moment of stillness, in this moment of presence, in this moment of time, all of a sudden I could feel my mother's liver failing in my own body. I could feel the struggle she had to breathe, the achiness of her body. I could feel it all in my body. And I was like, what's happening to me? And I looked over again at my mother, and before I knew it, and again, I don't have any recollection if this was 10 seconds or 10 minutes or 10 hours. It was just, I'm looking over at my mom, and I look over it again, and all of a sudden, there's this huge bright light where Mom was lying. It was just a light. And it wasn't Mom. It was just a light. And then I look down at my hands, and I'm looking at myself, and I become a light. And I'm thinking, what's happening? This light, this spirit, whatever you want to call it, says to my light and my spirit, many lifetimes before we incarnated into this body, you made me a promise. And the promise was that you would be here when I needed you most. Thank you. You have fulfilled your contract. You are free to go. And I'm just sitting there, and tears are coming down my face, and both sad and happy and proud. And I kind of blinked for a moment, and then I was back in my body, and I was looking over at Mother, and I was going, what happened? Marianne, all my life, from the time I was a minister to the trips, to the success, to everything, all my life was for that moment. My entire life was preparing me for that moment, to be able to say goodbye to my mother, but to also hear from that spirit, which I will call my mother, that I was free to go because I had fulfilled my contract with this particular entity, with my mom. And I realized in that moment, that's where the word radical comes from. Because I had to be radically mindful, radically present in order to experience what I had experienced. And so radical, the definition of radical mindfulness is just awareness. Awareness of eating, walking, yoga, whatever it is, your awareness that you're keen. But radical is the practice of mindfulness. It's being more mindful more of the time than not. I often have said to people, if you do yoga and meditate and do all these things in the morning, you spend 30 minutes connecting to the Creator or whatever it is you connect to, and then you get out on the freeway and the first thing you do, you're flipping people off, you have no practice. It happens, Marianne. You know it does.
It does happen.
You know, and I'm not going to say I don't do it either. It's just before I know, whoa, stop it. So what I'm saying is that's radical. That's the practice. And it can be in its most simple form. Because when we practice, that's why practice makes perfect, when we need it most, when our boss has said something that upsets us, or a coworker, or a significant other, or a wife, or whatever it may be, or a child, instead of reacting, which is not mindful, by the way, but taking a deep breath, or maybe using essential oils or whatever it is that gets you present, before you open your mouth will change your life. Not only will it change your life, it'll change your relationships, and it'll change everything around you, because we have such a knee-jerk reaction to whatever happens to us rather than taking a deep breath. And so that's what the motivation of this book was. The motivation was I wanted to know who I was, and I wanted to know why I did it, why I left. And then I realized that being able to experience my mom's passing the way I did was the greatest gift I ever received. It was the most beautiful experience, and there's more to the story you can read about in the book that happened after that experience that I had with her in the hospital. And that's what motivated me to write the book. And it took me longer than I thought because it was sensitive in the beginning. But I just wanted people to know that we can, all of us, whether you're a 20-year veteran of mindfulness or meditation or yoga, we all can learn. We all have the capacity and the ability to better our practice. And if we don't have a practice, for those of you listening that maybe don't have a practice, 60 seconds. 60 seconds is all it takes. And I'm sure there's people out there, going, I wish you wouldn't be telling people that, but it's true because I've tested it. I've tested it in a business environment where they had no one. I had 2 people out of 100 that even knew what meditation was or how to do it. And we did this 60-second meditation, laughter meditation, and a 60-second, being still. And they felt that change and that shift in their body. So I think when I say 60 seconds, it's because people are going, well, I can do anything for 60 seconds. It's not that long.
Yeah, but for a lot of people, if they have a loud environment or the monkey mind, you hear often people say, well, I can't do that. My mind keeps going. Or, and your book really has it so that there are steps that people can walk themselves through that it is achievable.
Yes, and they're simple. There's 5 practices and 6 steps. The practices I put in there because these were things I realized in order for me to really feel like that my centeredness, my radical mindfulness was genuine, authentic. I talk about the practice of connecting to essence and the practice of forgiveness, the practice of unconditional acceptance, the practice of celebrating life through gratitude and love, and the practice of integration, which I tell stories about my trips to the jungle, right? My trips all over the world in this time, because that's where I learned everything that I know. And it is simple. It's simple, but not easy. Why is it not easy? Because we're human. We can't accept simplicity.
Well, on that note, we're going to pause here for a quick break. We've been speaking with Daniel Gutierrez in regards to his new book, Radical Mindfulness, Profound Inner Peace in as little as 60 seconds. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne. We'll be right back after these messages.
Internationally recognized and award-winning author Judy Goodman works and teaches outside the box of limited thinking. Working with people from every walk of life, her goal is to empower you to be the best you can be, no matter what the challenge is. Born with the gift of seeing beyond our normal vision, she has an extraordinary gift of working with every challenge. Teaching beyond conventional wisdom, her work is described as life-changing. Visit judygoodman.com. That's judygoodman.com.
There comes a moment when you realize you're somewhere special, when you discover that each beautiful creature that you see has been rescued from a life of absolute horror and brought to this incredibly free place. Here's where their lives were forever changed and where yours will as well. Discover over 500 tigers, bears, and lions at the brand new visitor center at the Wild Animal Sanctuary just outside Denver. For more information, visit wildanimalsanctuary.org. Discover true freedom at the Wild Animal Sanctuary.
Have you ever had the sense that your thoughts might actually be doing something? Ancient secrets of manifesting have been masterfully revealed in the award-winning book Manifesting 123 by Ken Elliott. For the first time, the author's experiences and stories in this book describe exactly how your thoughts can create anything. You've been doing this all your life, but it's never been fully explained for you until now. Visit manifesting123.com for more information today. Manifesting123.com.
There are nearly 2 million Americans living with amputation. Many live right here in San Antonio. Becoming an amputee can be scary, frustrating, isolating, but there's no reason to feel alone. The San Antonio Amputee Foundation is here to help support you and guide you toward resources such as home and car modifications and even prosthetic limbs. For more information or to make a donation, visit saamputee.org. We'll help you live a full, active life, one step at a time. San Antonio Amputee Foundation, healing limbs, hearts, and souls.
Welcome back to Moments with Marianne. We're here today with special guest Daniel Gutierrez, and he's sharing with us his new book, Radical Mindfulness, Profound Inner Peace in as little as 60 seconds. Now, before we went for break, we were talking about being able to get to that place of being in meditation, being mindful. When we talk about how long does it take to become proficient, it's all about the practice. Once we start the practice and eventually we get to this point where it really doesn't take that long to achieve being in that place of mindfulness.
Mm-hmm. No, it's like I said, I can be walking in a park. I can be driving. Just don't close your eyes, please. Mm-hmm. And in a second, I can just breathe right into a very calm space. And folks, let me make a distinction I think people don't make about meditation and yoga and all these different practices. They're deep. They're deep and they're wonderful. But not everybody has the time just to devote to what it takes to get where they want to go. So I'm not saying don't do it. If you have a practice, that's wonderful. If you have a practice, get radically mindful and practice it more than not. It should just be a 30-minute thing that we do in the morning. It should be something that we take with us all day long. And at the end of the day, that we could, sit and be reflective that more than not, we stayed radically mindful. And I'm like I said, I'm clear that this is for everybody, that not just people who want to go to the Himalayas or to the Andes. I did that so you didn't have to.
Well, and not everyone can pack up and be gone for 3 weeks, in Nepal, so it's...
Or 6 years.
Or 6 years, yeah. So it does kind of help people who are, everyone has lives and we've got jobs and we've got responsibilities, but we could still have a path that's very meaningful and that has peace.
Yes, absolutely. All of us. Right now, every single one of us can take a deep breath. I remember the first time I'm fresh out of Manhattan, New York, LA, big city, and I'm sitting in a monastery. And I look over at the monk, and we're sitting on pillows, and if you could just imagine, silently, putting my mind to silence was not easy. And I look over at this monk, and I say, "Hey, how do I find peace and tranquility?" And he looks at me, bows his head, and said, "Breathe." And I thought, maybe he didn't hear me. So I said, "Hey, how do you find peace and tranquility?" And he looks up again, and he says, "Breathe." And I thought, look, buddy, I'm asking you how I find peace and tranquility. By now, the people in the class are going, "Oh, my gosh, this guy's so high-strung." He said, "Brother, you must learn to breathe." And I said, "Look, let me drop you off in the middle of Manhattan and see how much breathing you do." And so people are like, "Wow, this guy's uptight." But after a while, I realized that the simplicity of breathing is really what calms us down, because most of us right now, as we're listening to this show, are holding your breath. You're holding your breath. We do that all day long. So just breathing, 6 seconds of just breathing. You don't have to do anything fancy. Just breathe. Just breathe and give yourself a moment to breathe. And I know we can all do that.
Yeah. How did you come to develop your own daily practice for peace and inner tranquility? How did that come about?
Well, you know, as I said, as a licensed Baptist minister at the age of 17, I think I was always on a path of connectivity, connecting to something bigger than myself. And within that, I think I tried different practices, things. I just wanted to do things that worked for me. And but one of the things that, and I want to, if I have time, I'd love to go over these 6 steps that I have in the book. Do we have time for that? I won't elaborate on
time for whatever you want to talk about, of course.
Okay, good. So I want to go over this because nothing in our world is unique to us. Just the uniqueness in our story. Everything that's been said across the ages has been said. So I'm not going to share with you anything that's rocket science here. I think I have a chapter that says this is not rocket science. But I'm going to share with you what I did because I realized that I'm just like a lot of you. Man, my mind will take off, and before you know it, I'm already in 2025. And I'm like, whoa, how'd I get there? And so we're constantly living in stress and fear, connected to the fear of our past or fear of the future. And so I really needed to find something that worked for me, that would keep me in the moment, because the greatest power that we have is in the moment. There's no decision that you can make that will alter your life faster than what you can do in the moment. In other words, living in the future, there's no power, and living in the past, there's no power. But in the present moment, you can take that next step, follow those divine breadcrumbs that lead you to the path that you're looking for. However, in order to do that, one must be radically mindful. And I mean mindful consistently as you can. These are the 6 things that I wrote that I was doing that many of my clients and friends are now using. And eventually I'll have a little card. I think there's one in the back of the book. Mm-hmm. So when you want to get radically mindful, here's what I do. First, I get myself present. And there are many ways to get present. I already shared with you breathing, meditation, yoga. I love essential oils and aromas. The strongest sense that we have is smell, yet we don't use it enough. And so I use Palo Santo. I talk about it in the book. Palo Santo is sacred wood. It's something I bring back from Peru. And it's a scent that allows me to get centered just as soon as my nose or senses pick it up. And so that brings me into the present moment. Once you're present, once you know you're not living in the future or the past, ask yourself this question. What are my thoughts right now? Are they in the future? Are they in the past? Are they in the present? What are my thoughts? If they're anywhere but the present, then you've given away your power. So it's important that we get back into the present moment. Almost, I like in Central Park, they have these horse and buggy things, and the horses have these blinders on. It's almost like putting the blinders on so that we're not distracted by the chaos of life. Mm-hmm. And then I ask myself, this is number 3. Number 1 was get centered, get present, get radically mindful. Number 2 was, where are my thoughts? Number 3 is, this is important. This is what people need to ask themselves to get themselves in the moment. Am I okay right now? Not tomorrow, not last week, not even in the moment before and after. Right now, am I okay? Most of the time, the answer is yes. They say that 80 to 90% of the things we worry about never come to pass. Well, that's a lot of energy on a lot of stuff that never comes to pass. Once you ask yourself, am I okay right now? And you realize that you really are. Number 4, the question is, are the thoughts I'm currently having real? Have they ever been real? Well, the answer usually to that is no. And they've never been real. So let me give you an example. So a person on the, let's say, the 5th of the month is lamenting because they're scared they won't be able to pay the rent or the lease or the employees next month. Yet never in the history of their life have they ever missed a payment. But it's part of that motivation and stimulation of stress that gets them moving forward. So success by stimulation of stress is not success. It may be a kind of success, but it eventually takes its toll. So we go back to, are the thoughts I'm having right now real? No. The truth is you've never not paid the employees or the rent or the lease. And they've never been real. So that's a realization that we need to have in the present moment so that we can realize that we're creating our own chaos. Our own stress and anxiety is self-inflicted. We're bringing it on. Now, I'm not saying that there are some people that need medication for high levels of stress and anxiety. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the average person who fabricates anxiety and stress in order to give them some sense of normalcy. Kind of crazy that that's true, but it is. Number 5, once you've realized that it's never been true, that you've never not paid the rent or the employees or the lease, you ask yourself this question: is what I'm doing right now getting me closer or further from my desired outcome? So if it's a relationship and you need to call someone, is sitting there thinking about it getting you closer? No, pick up the phone. Or what if it's a client that you need to call, or a potential client, but you're not doing anything about it, which is causing the stress in the first place? In the present moment where you have all the power, you can pick up the phone and create a future, which is the next moment that's different than the one you're sitting in. Just merely by thinking about what is it that I need to do to get the desired outcome I need. But you can only do that in the present moment. And then the last thing, number 6, simple. Act. Do something that shifts the energy in the state you're currently in. Sometimes it may be taking a walk. Sometimes it may be making a phone call. Sometimes it might be going to work at Starbucks or getting out of your office. But act. I find that when I practice these steps of radical mindfulness, I am in my power most of the time. As long as I'm living from this space, I'm in my power. And from that space, you find peace and tranquility. Why? Because you're not stressed about anything. You recognize that everything you've ever desired is at the fingertips of your awareness. All you have to do is expand your awareness to see that there really isn't anything that won't be taken care of. One of the things I learned that I really like, a verse in the Bible that says, well, not even the birds of the fields toil about where they will eat or sleep. Who are we, children of the universe, that we would not be taken care of?
Well, and that's so important for people to remember, because if they get so far in the future and they start worrying, they're just bringing that information and that energy to them. And in the present moment, that's where all the magic happens, and you talk about that in your book.
Yes. And it's so powerful once we get that. Once we really get that. So my clients, when they're talking to me, I'm constantly going, okay, so that's great for next week, and I'm glad you're worried about that, but it doesn't have anything to do with today.
Mm-hmm.
Can we stay here, in the right here, right now, and converse about things that make a difference in your life or business? Yes. Well, when we do that, think about let's talk about work. If you happen to have a job, the things that stress you out are things that you're making up about whether your boss or coworker will or will not do. Well, that's kind of ridiculous, isn't it?
Yeah.
You're projecting something that isn't true, never has been true. When we can start to let go of that stuff, we don't have to go to the Himalayas. We don't have to go to Andes. We don't have to go to the jungle. You can just go inside your mind. I even have a product in the back of the book called the Little Red Recorder, which will be released later this year. It's been released, but we're still working on it. And I basically, what I did is I recorded hours and hours and hours of me in the jungle. You can hear the monkeys and the birds and the rain and the mosquitoes. And I recorded time in the Andes and everywhere I went. So we could create music, atmospheric and hemispheric music. It's done by Adam King. He's a composer. And he puts this music to these experiences I had. So you can actually listen to this music and these sounds of me in the jungle and experience the jungle without having to go to the jungle.
I'm grateful for that because, I'm not into the big spiders and snakes. So I was like,
Well, spiders, snakes, I mean, you name it. I was even outside once and I saw this most beautiful praying mantis. A praying mantis. I hadn't seen one since I was a kid. This one must have been 4, 5, 6 colors of the rainbow. And all I kept thinking was, it's pretty because it's dangerous. It's yeah, so I very quickly left.
In the jungle.
Yeah, it's true.
Oh my goodness. Well, it's interesting because, when people go along their spiritual path, everyone's got their own path, but there are ways to go about it that, like you're saying, you don't have to be in the jungle. You don't, have to go, to Nepal, and you can develop your own spiritual practice within New York City.
Yes, and you can develop your own spiritual practice in the chaos of life. Mm-hmm. Life is life. A good friend of mine, Michel Pascal, says, the ocean is not the ocean without waves, nor is life without problems. It is in our problems and in chaos that we find our peace and tranquility. Doesn't mean that stuff's not going to happen. Anyone who tells you that, run the opposite direction. Life is life. Stuff's going to happen. You're going to go outside and have a flat tire. You're going to be late at the airport. It just happens. But how you see that and how you respond to that is on you. Doesn't mean you didn't miss the flight. It just means if you missed the flight, you missed the flight. That's it. Don't need to make anything else about it. Maybe you should have got up earlier.
But and how you respond is a different it's a different way of being as opposed to reacting. Yes,
it is. And that's kind of the whole point about all this is that we have so much more power. You said something a minute ago, so true. If we as human beings are powerful manifestors. Powerful. How do I know that? Because we're constantly manifesting the past. Think about it. You ever heard someone say, I keep seem to attracting the same guy or girl? Why do I keep attracting the same, or why do I keep attracting the same boss? Because you're fixated on it. Our most dominant thoughts always being brought into existence. So if your most dominant thought is, I always have the same boyfriend or girlfriend, then you will always have the same boyfriend or girlfriend. When that thought changes to something different, a different experience, so does the experience of manifestation. And how do we do that? We get radically mindful. And we are in charge. I almost said that in Spanish. We're in charge of our thoughts. We are truly the captains of our ship. Otherwise, we're living life by default.
Well, and that's what I love about your book, Radical Mindfulness, because it takes mindfulness to a whole nother level. Because I think people have gotten a little complacent sometimes within their mindfulness practice. And it really brings you to a point where I'm not even sure if I know exactly how to describe this, because it's a really deep awareness. Things get more colorful and more, you become more present, and really, like, spirit opens up. It is a really deep part of a mindfulness practice that I don't think I've ever experienced before when I was reading this.
Thank you. Well, that's kind of the goal. Yeah, I don't know where in the book I wrote this. It may have been the second chapter, where I said that connection that I had to Source when I was 17, that is what I seek after now. Because I didn't have all of the, at 17, you're still pretty innocent. Mm-hmm. Life, it may be hard, but you don't have all of the experience of life. And that connection to Source, to the Creator, to the universe, to God, can only be found in the present moment, when we're able to release ourselves from the cage and the bondage of ourself. And when we do that, and I have found that, and I'm not always there, I'm not perfect, just like you, but I'm there more often than most. And in that, I can find beauty in every single thing I see, everywhere I go, every experience I have. I can see beauty because I work on staying radically mindful. You notice I never say I get there. There's no getting there. I think when we get there, we're 6 foot under.
Well, I would agree. It's just when we think that we've arrived, there's a new branch of the path we're on that's kind of taking us on a different terrain. It's like, you think you've got this? Let's try this out,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, and, in your book, you talk about forgiveness. So how important is forgiveness in all of this?
Oh, my goodness. Well, first, when I talk about forgiveness, I mean self-forgiveness. The first chapter, the first practice is connecting to essence, connecting to you, and connecting to others. In other words, we cannot give what we do not have. And therefore, finding self-forgiveness, I think, was a huge journey for me. Not crucifying myself with the regrets of yesterday and the fears of tomorrow, but really forgiving myself. And I think that I don't have to condone behavior. I don't have to like somebody, but I am required to love them. And I do that by unconditional forgiveness, or just forgiveness, and realizing that in that forgiveness, that external act is for an internal result. It's really about me cleaning my side of the road. It's really about me recognizing that when I find forgiveness for even those that are the hardest to forgive, I heal. Not only do I heal for myself, but I heal for others. It's also been said many times that people that do not forgive or unwilling to forgive is kind of like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. It doesn't happen. We're the ones that suffer that, and we feel that a lot of the work that I do with people, whether it's business or personal, always comes back to what are you holding inside? Because that which you keep in the dark consumes you. So what are you holding inside? What needs to come out? Where do you need to forgive yourself, and where do you need to forgive others? And when we find that, it's freeing. And it's a constant practice because we're human. We're human. And we're egotistical. And sometimes can be self-serving. Well, that's to be human. But also to be human is to find compassion and forgiveness and acceptance. So it's very important. All of the practices that I put in there are because I found my way to where I'm at today through those practices.
Mm-hmm. And this is where the journey has taken you. I know that you work with a lot of different corporations and companies and, top executives. What are some of the top topics that they have you come out to train on?
Well, I typically, there's different levels of training. My basic training is usually for employees to teach them the 60-second meditation, teach them about meditation, the basics of mindfulness and radical mindfulness. When you get into higher levels, I remember sitting with the president of HSBC North America a few years back, and he didn't ask me, how do I increase the bottom line? He didn't ask me, how do I manage my people better? What he asked me was something I thought was very telltale about high-level leaders. He asked me, how do I become a better leader? That is personal. And so when I'm working with higher-level management, then we're looking at how do I become a mindful leader? How do I become a leader of this century? How do I open my mind? Because I think that high-level leaders, I don't believe that they don't want us to have mindfulness in the workplace. Millennials have pushed that in our culture, and I'm glad they did. They're pushing yoga, they're pushing everything because they want that, and they don't want the stress that we've experienced, the baby boomers experienced. And so they're pushing that agenda. And I don't believe that the managers and the CEOs and CFOs and C-suite level don't want that. I think they're scared that is a sign of weakness, and it's not. It's actually a sign of power. And so my work, depending on the level of person that I'm dealing with in a corporation, may change because the way they see life is different. But the one I like the most is coming in and working with the employees. I like working with the high level senior staff as well. But working with the average person, because there are studies out there that have shown Target and Aetna, who have mindful practices throughout the day for their employees to play in, to participate in, not play, to participate in, have shown that these employees have measured a 20% increase in productivity by just being given the opportunity to go meditate during the day, or to have silence during the day, or to listen to a meditation during the day. Well, I know, having been in corporate and business for a long time, that most big companies, I mean, a Fortune 100, a Fortune 200, if they see a 3 to 5% increase in the bottom line, they're excited. But if you can find 20% increase in productivity from your employees, because you're giving them a little bit of space and time. As a matter of fact, the numbers from the Pew that came out, I'm not sure how long ago it was, but show that the losses of income due to lack of productivity is bigger than the loss of income to people calling in sick. I think we're focusing on the wrong thing.
Yeah, for sure. Well, it's just interesting where, these different corporations and these leaders, how they're turning to you to look for that guidance to help them move them along their own path.
Well, I think in today's world, leaders can't keep doing what they used to do, browbeating people and yelling at people and motivating them by stress and fear. Just doesn't work anymore. Yeah. It just doesn't work. And so we have to find ways. Big companies on Wall Street, like Goldman Sachs, reported in the New York Times a couple of years ago or a year ago that they were having a hard time hiring millennials. Well, I could imagine so. You're one of the most, longest institutions, financial institutions in the world, and still hold on to those old institutional ideas. Well, we've got to find and we got to find ways to this century and to bring in people the opportunity to find folks. We're only give them 60 seconds. For goodness sake, that ain't going to kill you. Give them 5 minutes. 5 minutes to get a 20% increase in productivity. I don't know. If you're in the way of the dollars of the boardroom and the shareholders because you fear something you don't know anything about, you may be the one that's replaced.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think a lot of leaders now, they don't want to rule that way. They don't want to be seen that way. They want to have a more, empowering life for themselves as well.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's, the nature of our world, and why we see, I think, a lot of women becoming leaders, because women think, or more typically to think things through than act and then think through.
Yeah, it's just a better way, and just to live all the way around. Well, and my goodness, I mean, your book, Radical Mindfulness, has so many great information, great tips. What are some final thoughts you'd like to leave our listeners with today?
All of us can find that level of peace and tranquility that we desire in life. We live in a very fast-paced life. 80,000 thoughts per day go through our mind, an average of 80,000 thoughts per day. Do yourself and your family and your coworkers and your employees and your friends, do yourself a favor. And if you don't have a practice, just give yourself 60 seconds. Another thing that I think is important, that maybe, I don't know if I put this in the book or not, but if every one of us are wearing smartwatches now and smartphones, if you will look at that, if you will go online and find out what your sitting heart rate is supposed to be, and then measure it by one of those devices, if it's high, you're stressed. Mm-hmm. That's a good barometer. Give yourself 60 seconds. That's all I'm asking. Give yourself 60 seconds, and your life will be better for it. Thank you for having me and for allowing me this time to share with your audience. I was so excited. I can't even believe we weren't even Facebook friends until recently.
Oh, I know. How did that not happen?
I know. I was like, really?
I was shocked myself. Well, and before you go, Daniel, where can our listeners connect with you and learn more, not just about your book, Radical Mindfulness, but also, because I know you do, you have Sacred Journeys, you do coaching,
yes,
where they can get professional speaking, can book you for that. Where can they go for all that good stuff?
Well, they can go to my website, and yes, I have DanielGutierrez.com. That's DanielGutierrez.com. You'll see my trips around the world that I take, the Sacred Journeys. I've been going to Peru for 10 years. I'm not making an announcement that isn't going to come out, but soon I will have my own center there in the Sacred Valley where people will come to learn. It's going to be, I know it's going to be exciting. You'll be watching for it on social media. But
I might be going. So, that sounds like a great thing to check out.
Yeah, I call it my home. It just happens to have 26 bedrooms. So it's going to be a great thing, to do, to come out. And it's not only for people who want to come out and see Machu Picchu, but it's also for a training center. That's the reason why I put it together. It's called Catalina, which was my mom's name. El Centro de Amor, Paz y Tranquilidad, which means the center of love, peace, and tranquility. So come out to my website. You'll see, you can book time with me. You can, and I call everybody myself. You don't get one of my staff or anyone I call. And thank you again for helping me promote the book, and thank you for giving me an opportunity to address your audience.
Well, thank you, Daniel. It's been such an honor to spend this time with you, and of course to talk about your new book, Radical Mindfulness. Again, if you'd like to connect with Daniel and learn more about his book, you can at his website, DanielGutierrez.com, and we'll have the link below. Again, Radical Mindfulness is available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all indie retailers. If they don't have it on the shelf, ask for them to order it. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I would like to thank everyone for tuning in. You're listening to Moments with Marianne. And remember, make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Moments with Marianne airs every Sunday, Monday, Thursday, and Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Pacific Time. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.